Today, United Bankers Bank stands as a testament to the power of community banking. It's a story of overcoming challenges and embracing change. From its humble beginnings as the nation's first bankers bank, UBB has grown to serve over 1,000 banks across America with over $1 billion in assets. This is UBB's epic 50th anniversary story, a saga of innovation, dedication, and relentless commitment to community banking. It's a story that began with a simple idea to create a safe harbor for community bankers. But to understand where UBB is today, we must return to where it all started. Not with UBB, but with the thousands of community banks that are the backbone of Main Street America.
If you like serving people and you like what you can do to help them, you'll like banking. It is so significant to make a community strong.
Community Bank has a clear purpose, and that is to provide for the financial needs of its communities.
Community banking is the backbone of many communities.
Community banking is different. We are about giving back.
We have clients that are in school, in high school, even younger than that, up to those that have been clients of ours for over 50 years. Startups, and also companies that have been with us for generations.
We have a fifth generation who's a part-time teller for us right now. My memories go back as far as 3 years old from the bank. I believe that having that relationship and that personal touch is really important.
Nobody, and I do mean nobody, can beat community banks for the level of attention and customer service and the growth of their own communities.
Small community banks are filling the needs of the communities in these small areas, and without a good, strong bank, the community could fail.
Local banks have always been the cornerstones of their communities. They are where bankers and their customers know each other by first name, where business is based on trust and relationships. However, by the mid-20th century, these community banks faced increased pressure from larger institutions.
The goal of all community banks is to remain competitive. Large banks have demonstrated in many ways over many years they're not interested in serving the smaller communities that community banks serve. You lose that touch and feel. Now they're just a number at this bank instead of a name, they're a number. It's important that you don't lose that community feel, that relationship with the customers that you've developed over years.
As deregulation allowed these larger banks to branch and grow, they began competing with community banks that relied on them for sensitive correspondent services.
There is a difference between the big banks and community banks in the way we do business and how we connect with our customers.
There was a strata of independent bankers that said, we don't want to be beholden to those guys. If you've got a $30 million bank, but you owe somebody $15 million on it, you're beholden to it.
Community bankers felt they were banking with the enemy.
All of a sudden, things changed. They were now the originators of our loans, and we can't rely on these large national banks to take care of the local communities. Who owns it, and who are they responsible to? To Wall Street.
This led to a critical question. How could community banks maintain their independence and continue to serve their communities when the larger banks, who also provided them with correspondent services, became their direct competitors? Visionary Minnesota bankers decided that they needed to take control of their destiny. They began discussing the idea of forming their own correspondent bank, a bank owned and controlled by the independent banks it served.
Minneapolis and St. Paul, twin cities of Minnesota, are the gateways in the north.
I was at Larkin Hoffman, and I was representing the independent bankers. It was really Noel Bush who came forward and proposed this activity. The idea was that we would organize a state bank
shareholders being banks authorized to do business in Minnesota. Noel came forward with this proposal and he said, "Do you think it will work?" And I said, "Well, it's never worked anywhere, but let's try it."
This idea wasn't just a minor shift, but a revolutionary concept that would challenge the established banking system.
The whole concept behind this thing was unique, and I think one of the sustaining features of it. If you look at the basics, it's really a co-op, a profit-making co-op. We have a charge to build capital.
People are buying shares in the co-op and trying to make life and business better for folks was basically at that core.
The plan was to create a banker's bank that would serve the needs of community banks and not compete with them. To bring this vision to life, state and federal laws needed to change, allowing banks to own stock in a banker's bank.
Noel had me draw up an outline of how we were going to do it. It was a step-by-step activity. The scheme that we had to follow was first getting approval of a charter of the bank. Then one of the problems was that the controller of the currency had a rule that did not allow national banks to invest in common stock. So I went out to Washington to talk to the deputy controller of the currency. He cited the rule and what we were about. And he said, we can change that. And so national banks then were able to invest in the bank. He had a lot of dealings with regulators. Banks are very much limited in what they can invest in. This would be a bank owning stock in another bank. That was the major legislative activity that we had.
After much debate and discussion, the Minnesota State Legislature passed the necessary legislation in March 1974, allowing community banks to invest in a Minnesota banker's bank.
I think they could see that this was the future of community banking, that there was a future here for this organization. They could see the relevance.
With this legal framework in place, the Independent State Bank of Minnesota won the authority to conduct, quote, all the usual and incidental powers and privileges belonging to the business of correspondent banking. In September 1975, a successful subscription effort raised over $1.3 million from 189 investor banks.
And that was a pretty big shot in the arm.
What we had was really a whole collection of ideas, diverse throughout the state. There's this little banker from Newmarket. There was some bankers that were in more of the metro area that were running larger organizations. And the key again was the commitment. We are all there because we own the place.
This capital infusion allowed the Independent State Bank of Minnesota to open its doors on December 15, 1975. The bank that would become UBB was born. The first day of operations was a humble beginning. The staff consisted of just one managing officer and a clerical employee. Early services included check clearing, bank stock, and overline loans. The bank's inaugural customer was Wanda State Bank, whose first cash letter was for $16 in food coupons.
We were downtown, 7th floor of the National City Bank building.
The quarters were, what's a good word for them? Nominal.
I mean, we didn't even have any kind of machines that did our daily statement. It was all by hand, all manual. Every bank had a folder, enter opening balance, transactions, figuring out by the end of the day, here's what you can invest, here's what you need to borrow. It was red pen, blue pen, and ledger sheets. At night we bundled everything up, sent it over for processing, and started again the next day. It was just really different.
Initially, community bankers hesitated to embrace the new institution, but the bank eventually gained momentum. By the decade's end, the Independent State Bank of Minnesota had grown significantly, and other states began to express interest in the banker's bank model. As the 1980s unfolded, the Independent State Bank of Minnesota faced new challenges.
Every year I'd look at I'd do the daily statement and I'd see the net profit and I was waiting for it to turn black, you know. And it took a while before that happened. Then we hit the farm crisis.
The bottom fell out of the egg market. Profits were down for everybody. Farmers were mad and had probably every right to be so.
I knew enough to know that things were really bad, but I didn't realize how bad. I came to work and the Federal Reserve Bank was here and the state of Minnesota was here. All these banks failing everywhere. It would just make you sick to hear another one's gone, another one's gone. That was a really bad time for UBB and all the community bankers. Our customers were just so important to us.
The farm crisis of the early 1980s put enormous pressure on community banks. The economic struggles of the time were mirrored in ISBM's financial performance. By 1983, the bank experienced a decline in net income and difficulties with loan quality. It became clear that change was needed.
I was actually at the board meeting when the change happened with the board. The owners, they brought on some really good people that could raise the capital.
Bill Rossiker was hired in 1985 to lead a turnaround.
Bill had been the head of correspondent banking for Marquette, but yet understood the dynamics of community banking very, very well. I can't begin to tell you what an absolutely fantastic job Bill did. I always admired him greatly for the kind of leadership he showed in some very, very difficult situations.
He was a tough boss, but he helped. I mean, he'd listen. Customers were happy, then he was happy. He had the greatest sense of humor, I think, that I've ever come across in a boss anyway.
Under Bill's direction and dedicated executive team, the bank would begin a remarkable transformation.
Well, Bill assembled a team, and I think that was key. Every one of those people that came in on the team knew what was going on when they got there.
They understood what made a bank profitable.
They absolutely, I think, performed a miracle because they went out and sold stock to all these bankers when everything was so horrible, and they did. And then when they'd bring in the checks, I'd be like, wow. I kept thinking how wonderful it is that they actually still believe in this.
Our customers wanted us to be successful. We had to prove that we could deliver value to them, and that was the challenge for the management team that Bill Rossiker put together.
In 1987, a capital drive raised $1.8 million, resounding proof that shareholders continued to believe in the bank's mission.
The shareholders, the owners, were committed to this purpose, to make sure that this entity kept going, because it was our best hedge against the larger banks that we would have to be correspondent customers of.
This bank was a leader from the day it was formed. So it's always been part of our nature, our culture.
In 1990, the bank moved to new quarters and took on a new name, United Bankers Bank, UBB.
We were looking more at growth. We also knew that we were not going to be just a Minnesota-based correspondent bank. That was a big deal.
The change would prove to be much more than a revamped logo and corporate identity. It would herald a dawning era of growth and innovation. The bank launched a hit parade of new products and services. Topping the list was UNET.
Once we had UNET and they could do, all of their own things, that was incredible. We take it for granted. We go on, we can use our online banking, do whatever we want, but that wasn't something that we had with our customers until we got to UNET.
It allowed a bank to blend operational functions that we as a correspondent bank provide with the functions that the Federal Reserve Bank provided as well. That service was successful literally right out of the gate.
I often think a lot of times that UBB has evolved into a technology company that does banking. It is just absolutely integral to everything we do.
The technology pieces on this is really kind of where we pride ourselves on helping a community bank, and not one size fits all. Each bank needs something totally different. It really is tailoring it to what the customer needs in their own environment.
As UBB became a trusted partner to a growing number of community banks, demand for its services drove expansion well beyond its original Midwest territory of Minnesota, North and South Dakota, and Iowa. Like the pioneers of old, UBB went west to the plains, the Pacific Northwest in 2009, and the Great Lakes region in 2010.
The geographic expansion is one thing I'm very proud of. My philosophy on making decisions has always been bankers first. That's why this bank was created.
In 2016, UBB took another significant step forward by merging with Great Lakes Bankers Bank, expanding its reach to community banks in Ohio and Michigan.
Great Lakes Bankers Bank merged into UBB. We brought them in one by one. We did not lose one of those customer banks that were JLBB. We were able to bring them all on.
The bank's relentless focus on helping community banks weather the farm crisis, the Great Recession 25 years later, and the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2022, the UBB banner would fly over several states in the Southeast, from the Carolinas through Georgia, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
I'm sitting in my office one day and I answer my phone. I got a call and it's a guy talking to me with a really heavy Southern accent and was looking to make a change. And I'm sitting there going, South Carolina, how's that going to work with a bank in Minnesota that's headquartered in Minnesota, right? And we talked a couple more times and I started thinking, you know what, this guy did the job the same way I did the job. The philosophy was the same, and so we ended up making an offer to him and he's knocked it out of the park. For UBB, that kind of taught us that it's not really geographic, it's more philosophical in how you do it, how you approach the banks and how you actually sell to them. When you look at market expansion, it's really the people. My belief is you got to show up, you got to be in the bank and talk to the bankers.
Of course, UBB's commitment to community banking goes well beyond a broad portfolio of products or geographic expansion. What distinguishes UBB from big bank competition and other bankers' banks are its people. Their professionalism, loyalty, and zealous dedication to customer service have become legendary. With this core value deeply woven into the UBB DNA, the bank introduced a new slogan in 2008, "First for your success."
Our mission is first for your success, and trying to help the banks stay relevant in their community, cities, and towns.
That is the service culture that has been developed here at United Bankers Bank. We are all in on community banking.
In 2022, UBB helped launch a community banking movement with an outpouring of support from their customers.
The idea for the Community Bank Love movement, it all started with a bank visit. Saw on the back of her laptop, "I love community banking" sticker. Something in the back of my mind kept thinking about it. There's an idea here. Banks, they do all these great things, but they're also not really good about taking credit for it. So this was an opportunity for them to be recognized for all the great things that they do and how important of a role they play in their community. That was really at the heart of how this movement came about. We've distributed over 65,000 decals around the country, taking this next step to making it kind of a movement. It just fits so perfectly with what we do and who we are. United Bankers Bank is associated with loving community banks. It doesn't get any better than that.
Which brings us nicely to the people who matter most, the hundreds of community bankers who have invested in UBB. who turn to UBB for mission-critical services, who call UBB home, and some of them for 2 and 3 generations. Let's ask them what 50 years of Bankers Bank support means to community banking.
As a bank, we have to consistently look at how we make banking easier. When you look at big banks, they have resources that community banks just don't have at their fingertips, which is where our partners like UBB come in. Our success as an institution is just as important to them as it is to me.
What they do and demonstrate to us on a regular basis, their tagline, "First for your success," is a great example. They've been a great partner for us for years.
I don't think we could succeed without them being here. They're always there. It means a lot to us as banks to see our Bankers Bank there for us.
We've formed such a great relationship with everybody at UBB. They care about relationships just like we care about relationships. That's kind of the key. They act like a community bank for all us community banks.
So congratulations, UBB, on your 50-year anniversary. Great job.
By now, we hope it's clear. UBB's 50th anniversary story is a story of people. People dedicated to the mission of supporting community banking. From its seasoned executive leadership to industry expert staff to the CBOs working directly with client banks, the human element has always been at the heart of UBB's success.
What we do every day is the customer side of it. Visiting with the banks one-on-one, taking those phone calls, finding out where can we help you? What are you having problems with? We can provide the information to you. And the greatest joy is if I can help somebody with a challenge or an issue, that has made the day worth everything else that went wrong.
My predecessor left this for me. I have it sitting on my desk so I can actually see it. And it says, number 1 rule, if we don't take care of our customers, somebody else will. The community bankers we work with always wanted us to be able to be successful. They knew if we were successful, they would be successful.
Who we are, what we do, our mission. When banks think about UBB, they think about the Bankers Bank that loves community banks. We're not only the nation's first Bankers Bank, but we're committed to the success of all of our customers. This isn't possible without a love for community banks and what they do.
It's been through a lot of hard work and dedication to get to where we are today. The founders, their vision has become a tremendous success. UBB has always had a little bit of a chip on its shoulder, being the underdog, and frankly, I really hope that the new generation of leadership understands where this bank came from and how it got to where it is today, and provide the new products and services that our larger customers are going to need over time.
Of course, the story of UBB is still being written. It's a story of community banks overcoming unprecedented challenges to deliver for their customers, communities, and the nation. In a constantly changing world, UBB will continue to innovate and adapt to meet the needs of community banks and find ways to help them serve their customers for generations to come.
It's an amazing accomplishment to reach 50 years. The first Bankers Bank in the country, in the nation, which is outstanding. And more importantly, the dedication that I see in the staff is the organization is in great hands for the future.
As UBB celebrates 50 years, it's clear the values and vision of the founders will continue to guide the bank forward. UBB is not just a bank, it's a partner, an advocate, and a champion for community banking. UBB is